Hello, my name is Seketta Skoloda. I'm a doctoral candidate at Baylor University School of Education in the Learning and Organizational Change program. I currently serve as a magistrate in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 20th District. I am privileged to present the findings from my research conducted under the guidance of Dr. Layla Sangoris in preparation for my defense. My dissertation is titled Striving for Fairness, a case study of Black female Virginia magistrates' experiences and their intersecting identities as decision makers in the justice system. This study examines how Black women in position of power navigate in the historically white male dominated profession to achieve fairness and legitimacy. This presentation begins with a description of the problem statement and continues with highlights of each chapter, concluding with a brief overview of the distribution plan. Magistrates from marginalized populations face persistent challenges as they strive for fairness within a justice system shaped by racial and ethnic disparities. Research has demonstrated how implicit bias and systemic racism impact judicial decision making and perceptions of fairness. Clemens 2014, Holbrook and others 2022. Black women in position of power face unique obstacles at the intersection of race and gender, including underrepresentation, stereotyping, and workplace isolation. Hilgott and others, 2018. Understanding the experiences of Black women magistrates in Virginia offers critical insight into how identity shapes authority and decision making, contributing to more equitable practices and strengthening the legitimacy of judicial outcomes. Stevens and Gavin, 2021. My literature review begins by examining the evidence and perception of systemic bias in society. Bonilla Silva, 2015. How Microaggression Normalizes Bias, Cook and O'Hara, 2019. And despite some progress, how minoritized communities are disproportionately affected, Hetty and others, 2016. Next, I look at how the perception of procedural fairness fosters trust and enhances public acceptance. Walters and Bolger, 2018. How implicit bias affects discretion. Clemens, 2014. And the ways reforms are confounded. Richards and Kukute Laze, 2020. Finally, I focus on the critical points of decision making in the justice system. Namehard and Robin, 2021. The particular roles of Virginia magistrates cited in the Virginia Code, and the perspectives of Black women addressing challenge. Kelly and Winkle Wagner, 2017. The purpose of this qualitative single case study was to examine how Black women magistrates in Virginia describe their experiences and decision making process through the lens of intersectionality. By illuminating their lived experiences, this study contributes to deeper understanding of the challenges to achieving greater fairness in a complex justice system. The research question asks, how do Black women magistrates describe the role intersectionality plays in shaping their judicial experiences and decision making? The concept of intersectionality, which originated from Crenshaw 1989, focused on intersecting identities, has evolved. Collins 2015, Hill Collins 2019 work brought a new dimension to intersectionality, emphasizing the role of oppression and power relations. Intersecting identities refers to the multiple dimensions of identity that each person embodies, which contributes to unique experiences of discrimination or privilege. Oppression acts on multiple levels, affecting individuals uniquely and complexly. Those affected by race and gender share a strong commitment to challenge it. Power relations actively shapes societal structures and institutions, distributing power in a way that often privileges certain groups while marginalizing others. I selected a qualitative single case study design to explore the experience of decision making of Black women magistrates in Virginia criminal justice system. Qualitative research offered me a nuanced examination of human social interactions. Criswell and Plouffe, 2018, particularly where power and culture intersect. A sample size of 4 allowed for a detailed exploration of each participant while maintaining a manageable scope for analysis. I selected participants using purposive and snowballing sampling to meet the criteria for magistrates identifying as Black women, with at least 3 years of experience in the magistrate system. This approach became necessary given the lack of institutional support and limited visibility of the targeted population. I divided the qualitative data collection procedure into 3 steps. First, I used semi-structured interviews as the first data source, using the same 10 open-ended questions for each participant. I based follow-up questions upon my observation of their behavior and answers and to explore personal and social contexts of their experiences. Second, the 4 participants took part in a focus group via Zoom, which fostered an environment where they could share their deep insights. Bloomberg 2023. Third, I introduced a reflective questionnaire where they were encouraged to refine their thoughts. These combined strategies were effective in capturing diverse perspectives and highlighting the complex influence of intersectionality on the Black women judicial decision making. Participants' race, gender, and social background influence their professional identity and shape their approach to navigating challenges. Participants reported that their race and gender shaped how others perceived their legitimacy as magistrates. Participants' appearance and identity shaped how the public judged them, revealing the persistence of bias in professional interactions. Citizens, as well as law enforcement actors, questioned their authority, requiring them to reaffirm their judicial role in subtle but meaningful ways. Operating within a predominantly white justice system shaped participants' self perception and how others perceived them as Black female magistrates. These experiences did not occur in every interaction, but when present, they reflected intrinsic assumptions about who typically holds judicial authority in Virginia magistrate system. Despite these challenges, participants demonstrated resilience and professionalism in performing their duties. Participants navigated institutional expectations shaped by their race and gender as they exercised authority through decision making, probable cause determination, and interaction with the public and law enforcement. They approached leadership as Black women magistrates by integrating legal expertise with lessons drawn from lived experience. Their strategies include balancing authority with perception, fostering trust, and upholding equity in decision making within a system historically structured without their inclusion. These approaches allow participants to maintain impartiality while navigating institutional and interpersonal barriers. Systemic and institutional challenges rooted in race and gender limited participants' equitable treatment and recognition. Viewed through the lens of intersectionality, these findings reveal how overlapping systems of identity and power shape participants' professional realities. Rather than limiting their ability to serve, these dynamics informed how they interpreted fairness and exercised judgment with a heightened awareness of justice in practice. Participants called for system reform to address barriers and promote fairness within the justice system. Collectively, these narratives underscore the importance in recognizing identity as a factor in judicial authority and decision making, offering insight into how inclusive practices can strengthen both legitimacy and equity within the magistrate system. My findings connect closely with existing scholarship and extend understanding of how these Black women magistrates navigate their roles. First, participants describe being questioned about their authority, facing increased scrutiny, and experiencing situations where their legitimacy was not accepted. These findings echo Cho and others, 2013, who show how racism and sexism intersect to intensify marginalization, and align with Spade and others, 2020, who noted Black women often develop strategies to respond to compounded pressure. Second, participants believe their presence fostered trust, particularly for communities skeptical of the system. They emphasize balancing neutrality with empathy and recognize that respect enhances legitimacy. This follows Tyler and Saviar's 2013 and Walter and Bolger 2018, who found that respectful judicial conduct strengthens institutional trust, and connects with Holbrook's 2022, who showed that when judges acknowledging bias improves public confidence. Third, participants highlighted their authority in bond and probable cause rulings, described using contextual awareness, and viewed discretion as a tool for fairness. Their approach supports Namehart and Robbins 2021, who found early stage decisions have lasting impacts, and addresses concern that race neutral practices ignore systemic inequities. Menifee 2018. Participants underscore their position as early stage gatekeepers, but noted their authority was often questioned. At the same time, they worked to humanize justice through demeanor and clarity. This aligns with Agnew and Mack 2013, that judicial demeanor shapes legitimacy, and Frazier and Burgess and others 2021, who found that Black women moral reasoning draws on lived experience. Fifth, participants describe navigating invisibility and hypervisibility, adapting communications to institutional norms, and drawing on faith and resilience. Their reflection echoed Kelly and Winkelwagner 2017 on hypervisibility, Potter and others 2021 on women of color proving credibility, and Mathis on faith as a coping strategy. These findings affirm the presence of bias, but also show how Black women magistrates use identity, resilience, and professionalism to advance fairness and legitimacy within the justice system. This study identifies key implications and recommendations for improving how magistrates' decisions are shaped and perceived. Management, statewide policy, legislative frameworks all play a role. Four key decision makers are Magistrate System Management, the Office of the Executive Secretary, the Virginia General Assembly, and magistrates themselves. For Black women magistrates in particular, these factors bring unique challenges, but they also highlight opportunities to increase fairness, accountability, and equity in the system. By fostering open dialogue and collaboration among all levels of leadership, these recommendations can help cultivate an environment where evaluation processes are consistent and expectations are clear. When equity is prioritized, it encourages all these involved parties to address structural barriers and implicit biases that impact decision making. Ultimately, such a unified approach empowers magistrates to serve with integrity and promotes trust in the judicial process, benefiting communities across the state. Several limitations were encountered in this study. First, recruitment proved challenging. I was unable to obtain information directly from the agency involved. As a result, the participant pool was smaller than anticipated, consisting of 4 individuals instead of 6, after 2 withdrew over concerns regarding evolving DEI policies. Second, my Freedom of Information Act request for demographic data remained unanswered, precluding the ability to contextualize the participant sample against statewide statistics. Third, in the absence of institutional support, I employed purposive and snowball sampling strategies, which affected the representativeness of the data collected. Fourth, existing professional relationships with some participants introduced possible response bias. To address these challenges, I prioritize authenticity, implemented triangulation, and engage in reflexivity concerning my positionality, guided by Criswell and Ploth, 2018. Finally, the reflective questionnaire yielded limited information. Although these constraints limit the breadth of the study, they do not diminish its significance in shedding light on the experiences of Black women magistrates. My distribution plan targets three key decision makers who have the most influence over magistrate practices in Virginia. First, I will share findings with magistrate system management during regional meetings. This will include a 30-minute presentation and a one-page summary designed to inform changes in training, evaluation, and mentorship. Second, I will present to the Office of the Executive Secretary at the biannual Magistrate Conference. Here I will use data visualizations and practical recommendations to support equity focused updates in policy and training content. Finally, I will reach the Virginia General Assembly by requesting that OES present findings to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. This 30-minute legislative briefing will emphasize actionable recommendations to strengthen fairness, equity, and public trust in the magistrate system. Together, these strategies ensure that the study's findings move beyond research into meaningful policy and practice.